Hi, this is Gary with MacMost.com. Let's take a look at some new system and app settings in macOS Sonoma. MacMost is brought to you thanks to a great group of more than 1,000 supporters. Go to macmost.com/Patreon. There you could read more about it, join us, and get exclusive content and course discounts. Now with every new major update of macOS comes some new settings, both in system settings and in some of the built-in apps. So to look at these we're going to go to system settings here. And the first one we're going to look at is one where I've changed it from the default myself. And this is when you click the desktop background it will move all windows out of the way. This is the equivalent to what we had before and it still works if you use F11 or sometimes the FN key and F11 depending upon your settings. And that will do the same thing. So this functionality isn't new. It's just clicking the desktop to make it happen. That's new. To turn this off all you need to do is go in System Settings to Desktop and Dock. And then there's a setting for this under Desktop and Stage Manager. Here you'll see click Wallpaper to reveal desktop. You can switch it from always to only in Stage Manager. Stage Manager was new in macOS Ventura and it had this functionality in it. So you can go back to how it worked in Ventura where this only happened in Stage Manager or have it switched to always where it'll work in Stage Manager and also in regular desktop mode. Now while we're here in Desktop and Dock there's a whole new section here for widgets. Of course, widgets are the new functionality where you can put things like clocks and calendars and notes and stuff on your desktop. You can choose to have these widgets shown on the desktop, in Stage Manager, in both or neither. So you can basically turn widgets off by turning off both of these. You can choose the widget style to have it be full color always, monochrome always, or switch depending upon whether the desktop is focused on. You can also choose whether or not iPhone widgets are allowed in addition to Mac widgets. Another change is what the lock screen looks like. If you go and lock your screen you'll see a big clock now at the top. But you have the option to turn this off. So for that you want to go down to Lock Screen and then you've got a new setting for Show Large Clock. You can have it on Screensaver and Lock Screen, only on the lock screen, or never. So if I switch it to never and lock the screen you can see it's gone. Now let's go to Accessibility settings. Under Vision if you go to Display there's now something new under Text Size. You can go to a submenu here and it lists some of the major apps like Calendar, Mail, Messages, and such. And you can set a size for the fonts inside of those particular apps to something different than the default size. So changing this will actually change it in other places. Like notice how it's changing there in System Settings. But if I wanted this to stay at the default but maybe Calendar be larger I could set Calendar to something like that. All of these of course have either the default or use the preferred reading size here to obey the system setting. Right now we only have these apps here but third-party apps may be able to add themselves to this list and in the future Apple may add other apps as well. If we go back to the top level of accessibility under Zoom now you're not going to see anything new here but Zoom actually has changed because now when you turn zooming on each display has its own zoom level. So here I'm going to show you both of my displays and my pointer is over one display and I could zoom in on that display. And now my pointer is over the other display and I can zoom on that display. Displays can have separate zoom amounts. Also in Display there's a new setting here for autoplay animated images. So if you have this turned off things like animated GIFs won't automatically animate. You would have to click on them to do so. Now let's switch away from System Settings for a minute here and go into an app. Safari has some new settings. So if we go into Safari and then we look at Safari settings here then let's first start by going to Search. Search allows you to pick a search engine just like before and you've got these 5 to choose from. What's new is there's a second choice of search engine and this is for private browsing windows. So you can choose one for your regular windows and then when you open a private browsing window you can have a separate search engine for that. Now if you go to Privacy there's a button here for Advanced Settings. And one of the new things in here is Use Advanced Tracking and Fingerprinting Protection. And then you can set it for an all browsing or private browsing. So this will try to prevent websites from tracking you from site to site. Note that the word fingerprinting here is very confusing for a lot of people. It has nothing to do with your actual fingerprint. It's talking about trying to figure out who you are or what sites you've been to based on things about you. Like for instance that you're a Mac user using a certain version of Safari with a certain screen size and other settings, and it can kind of match that from site to site to figure out if you're the same person or not. So turning this on will hide a lot of that information. Now if we go over to passwords here, there's a new setting if you go into password options, and that's to clean up automatically. So the idea here is when you get verification codes in messages or mail, these are the two-factor codes that you'll use one time and then they're not valid for anything anymore. You can have those messages and emails automatically get deleted when you're done with them. If we go to privacy here, you've got private browsing, require password to view locked tabs. So when you have a private browsing window open and say you don't use Safari for a while or you lock your Mac, then you go back to that private tab, you're going to need to enter in your Mac account password in order to open those up again. And of course while we're looking at new settings here, it should be noted we have an entire new section called Profiles that allows you to set up different profiles in Safari. So you use this say to have your cookies be separate. So you could be logged in to a website using one account and then in a profile be logged in using a separate account. So this whole new section here deals with creating profiles and managing them. And I'll be looking at profiles in detail in a future video. Now another thing that you could find in Safari but also in system settings is the ability to share passwords. So I'm going to do it in system settings here. I'm going to go to the password section and you can see here shared passwords and passkeys. So you can use the Get Started button here and you can set this up. So now that we're back in system settings here, let's go to Wallpaper. And this looks very new because it's centered now on the new Arial wallpapers. And you've got a variety of those here. Now one thing about these is that you don't have them on your Mac by default. You need to download them. So if you were to switch to one and you see there's a little download arrows here, it would actually download it and then it would take up space on your Mac. The question that everybody's got is once you've downloaded one of these dynamic wallpapers, how do you get rid of it? There's no delete button or offload button. Well, there's no way to do it here in system settings. You have to actually go to the location on your drive where these are stored and delete them manually. So to get there in the Finder, I'm going to choose Go and then go to the computer level. So at the top level, go into your hard drive and then into Library. So now you're at the top level Library folder, not your user library folder. Then from there you're going to go into Application Support and look for com.apple.idleassetsd. Go in there and then you'll see Customer. If you go down into that and you see a lot of folders, these are for different resolutions for these. So you can do Command J and then calculate all sizes here. And for me it shows that it's got the largest one. So the 4K 240 frames per second versions of those. Now if I want to get rid of them I just dig down into here and I'm going to find them all. They're going to have names that you can't really use to identify them. But if you select one and quick look you'll see it. And yes, these are standard videos that you could say take and play around with in iMovie if you wanted to. If you want to get rid of one of these, just drag it to the trash and empty your trash. Or if you want to clear them all out and re-download just the ones you need, select them all and then drag them all to the trash and empty trash. Now note if you do that, this will not update system settings. So system settings doesn't know in the wallpaper section that you manually deleted these. So what you want to do is simply just a quick restart or log out and log into your account and that will then update what's downloaded and what isn't. Now another new thing in macOS Sonoma is game mode. So whenever you run a game, whether it's a casual game or a super hardcore massive AAA title, it's going to go into game mode. So here I am, I've got a simple game running and you can see game mode up here. So note that you've got the setting to turn game mode off. Game mode of course will optimize everything centering on the game. So a lot more processor memory is going to go to the game that you're playing, which you probably want if you're playing the game. But if for some reason it's a casual game and you're also switching back and forth from it to other apps and you don't want game mode, you can always just switch it off like that. So back in system settings, there's something new if you look under Mouse. There's now an option under Advanced for pointer acceleration. So I can now set pointer acceleration for the mouse separate from having that going in the trackpad. Also, under Bluetooth, you're going to find different settings for some AirPods. So under AirPods Pro here, I've got those. They've previously been used on this Mac. If I click the I button, notice I've got a bit better control over whether or not the AirPods connect to the Mac. I can set it to connect automatically or only when last connected to this Mac. Now a big setting that gets lots of attention is under Siri and Spotlight, and that's the ability to set what Siri listens for. So now it can listen for its name or its name preceded by the word hey. Or you can go to the older setting where it always has to be preceded by the word hey. Or of course you can switch this off so you have to use the menu item here or keyboard shortcut to trigger Siri. There aren't really many new settings in the productivity apps, but Reminders has one. Remember, now we have the new groceries list in Reminders where we can set a list as the type groceries, and then when we add items they'll immediately be categorized in different sections. You also have the ability to change where something is. So for instance, if I were to add cookies here, it puts it under snacks and candy. If I say, hey, I want cake to be under snacks and candy as well, it's going to remember that. So next time I type cake, it should put it under snacks and candy. You can reset that by going to Reminders Settings, and you'll see Grocery Lists Reset Grocery Categories. I want to end by showing you one system setting that actually isn't new because it was added in Ventura, but not originally in Ventura. It was added in the middle, I think the 0.3 version of Ventura. And that's if you go into System Settings and then General and then Software Update, then under Automatic Updates, click the I button there. There are separate switches for what gets automatically updated. Of course, I've got these all checked, but now there's a separate item here for Install Security Responses and System Files. That is for Apple's rapid security response when there's something very important that needs to be updated in order to protect you. So you definitely want to make sure you have that turned on. And there's a look at a whole bunch of new settings that you could check out once you've updated to macOS Sonoma. Hope you found this useful. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, click the thumbs up button below to let me know. I publish new tutorials each weekday. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out.